Ladies and gentlemen, today on the program, a conversation with Dr. Nadia Azar. Dr. Azar is a researcher at the University of Windsor, and what's interesting is that she does research on drummers. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, if she does research on drummers, then she must work in the psychology department. But not so. She does research on the physical aspects of drumming and how the act of drumming affects your physiology and takes a toll on the human body. And to do that, she has worked with people like Kerch from Shinedown and Todd Sucherman of Styx, and Danny Miles of July Talk, who was a guest on my program, you know? So she does really, really interesting research, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how she came to that research, okay? And what's really fun for me is that the story of how she came to that research ties very, very much to my personal slogan, good things happen when you put yourself out there. We're going to talk a lot about that. Now, before we get to Dr. Azar, I have to say a big, big thank you to all of the people who wrote to me to say how much they enjoyed the last episode, in particular, my ode to Neil Peart. And I know that there's 2 or 3 people out there now who are checking out the Ghost Rider book, which is so wonderful, and that I am again reading myself and continue to go through it again, because it's a really terrific book. If you're not reading it, you should definitely check it out. So thank you to those people. And thank you to everyone who has been supportive of the solo-sodes and who has told me they like them, and who are looking forward, hopefully, to more of them in the future. But for today, we're going just a little bit old school, kids. We're going to talk to Dr. Azar. She has a really cool story, and hey, you know, isn't it neat to be an academic, a professional academic, studying drummers? Now, as she says herself, she never saw that coming. She's a big music fan, loves the rock music, never imagined that her academic work, her job, would be studying drummers, would be being on stage with drummers in some cases, and high-profile players, you know? So you never see what's coming, kids. You kind of follow the intuitions you have. The intuition in her case was to go into academic research in the medical field and to follow that passion that she has and to follow the love, which was academics for her, and then to take a chance. And she did take a chance. She put herself out there in one very specific way, in one very specific incident, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. She's going to tell you what it is. And from that small act of courage, we keep talking about the small acts of courage, came this whole wing of research, this whole project, this whole start to her career that she never saw coming. And that's what I mean when I say good things happen when you put yourself out there. But enough of me talking for a change. Let's get to Dr. Nadia Azar, and I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you're inspired by it, and if you are, please drop me a line and let me know. Until then, Dr. Nadia Azar and Dr. Denny Gauthier, roll intro! Hello, you're listening to the John Huff Podcast. Oh, yay. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah.
You are, you're heading off to the NAMM show soon.
I am, yes. One more week.
Have you done NAMM before?
I was there last year, yeah.
Were you? Are you presenting?
Yeah. No, I am working with Drum Talk TV. So I'm there as one of their correspondents covering the event, interviewing drummers about like health and fitness and injury prevention and stuff.
Oh, wow. That's exciting. How did you get that gig?
I connected with so the CEO Dan. I connected with him a couple years ago when I started my drummer injury survey and like the research that I do with the professional drummers. And just through like over the course of that year, we were just in communication a lot. And he asked me if I'd want to come and be part of their team last year. So I did, and it was awesome. So now I'm going back this year.
What's it like being at NAMM? I've never been.
It is bananas.
Really?
Yeah. No, it's really, I mean, I was working, so it was really busy, but it's a mass of people and noise like you've never heard before.
It seems to me, now for those who are listening who don't know what NAMM is, it's got to be the biggest basically music trade show on the continent. Is that right?
Definitely on the continent. It might be in the world, although I did hear there's a European version, but I don't know how big that one is because I've never been.
So if you can imagine, is it one building? Is it a bunch of buildings?
It's mainly housed in the Anaheim Convention Center.
Okay.
The majority of the exhibitors are there, but there are some things that are happening in, I think, the Marriott Hotel nearby. Like there's sort of like a campus for the NAMM show, but I think I heard something like 150,000 people attend it over the 4 days.
So it's like if you've ever walked into an instrument store, your local Long and McQuade, and it's just a chaos of people messing around with instruments. It's like the biggest Long and McQuade in the world.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
man.
Multiply that by it. Yeah. It's so... It's loud. I don't even want to say loud doesn't describe it because I mean, yes, it's loud, but it's like sensory overload because it's just, it's not loud like a concert's loud, but you can still make sense of it. It's just like constant noise all day long. And it's just like you walk outside and you're like, whoa,
I bet.
That was a lot. Yeah. So,
But you're going in to interview people. So do you have those things lined up first or you just see what happens?
mostly I see what happens, and most of the lining up of interviews falls on Dan and his wife, who's also his production manager, Enja. But I do have a couple people that I've lined up through my own contacts who I know were going to be there, and so I asked them if they would come and talk with me on camera. So I do have a couple lined up. For the most part, either Dan knows who's coming, or people just sort of show up and we'll schedule them in.
That's the thing, is that you can be walking around the NAMM floor and some of the most famous musicians you've ever seen happen to be just around, they're working a booth or they're demoing a product or they're just there. It's got to be kind of surreal.
It is. Yeah, it's really neat. You'll be walking down the hall and, there's actually, we were in the media room that they have a sort of like little rest area for media to catch their breath. And we walked in one time and Ed Sheeran was in there.
Really?
giving interviews. We're like, oh,
hi, Ed.
In the middle of a crowd of people. Yeah. So
I one of my earlier episodes is with a guy called Dave Benedict, and he was and still is the bass player in the band Default. Do you know the band Default?
I do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Dave's an old high school buddy of mine, and he told us the great story of being in a studio in LA recording one of their records. And he walks into the hall and he bumps into a guy, and it's Mick Jagger.
Oh, just Mick Jagger.
It's just Mick. So they had a chat, as you would. Couple of dudes. Anyway, so I'm stoked that you're going to NAMM. I wish I was going to NAMM, but nobody's going to pay me to do it yet. I'm putting it out there, though.
Yeah.
So the other thing you should know is that I attended the University of Windsor for 1 year.
You did?
I did.
What program?
At the time, I was majoring in history. Okay. And I lived in McDonald Hall.
Yep, familiar.
Room number 711. And our window faced out to the Ambassador Bridge, and there were times when I was tempted to jump off of it.
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
That's sad.
I'm just kidding.
It's tough being away from home. It's a big adjustment if that's your first year, for sure.
Did you grow up in Windsor?
I did, yeah. And I'm actually an alum of Windsor as well for both my bachelor's and my master's degree.
I know you are because I've done my research on you. And now you're an academic at the University of Windsor.
That's right.
Working
yes.
on a project that I bet you never imagined you'd be working on when you started your academic work.
I most certainly did not. Not to this extent. I had some ideas about doing some ergonomics type research with musicians, but it never. And then a couple years later, actually, my brother-in-law, who is a drummer, mentioned something to me about doing some research on drummers. I thought, oh yeah, that'd be kind of cool, but never really pursued it until this stuff kind of fell into my lap a couple of years ago, and now it's pretty much. It's my primary research area. So,
the places you'll go. But you are not a drummer yourself.
No. I can play.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not completely incompetent back there, but I'm definitely not. I don't practice regularly. I was for a little while taking some lessons, but I don't practice often enough to be able to call myself a drummer.
But you've got access to some of the greatest drummers on the planet. There are photos of you with Todd Sucherman, for crying out loud.
Yep.
Todd can teach you a thing or two, man.
I know. Todd's a busy guy, though.
He is a busy guy, and he's a great guy.
He is a great guy.
I'm bouncing all over the place, but tell me how this came to be. Now, for the uninitiated, tell us a little bit about your research.
So my research is focused on studying the physical demands of playing the drums. And I do that through sort of two different lenses, I guess. One is considering drummers as athletes. So I document the work that I do with professional drummers like Todd and many others. I monitor their heart rate and their energy expenditure while they're playing live shows. And that's the stuff that is posted on all my social media. All the individual results are posted like that. So drummers as athletes. And then the other half of the work that I do is drummers as workers. So if you consider that this is for a lot of drummers, their occupation, like any other person who has a very physically strenuous job, or a very repetitive job, they face a lot of work, in this case, they're playing related musculoskeletal disorders, but they're basically work related injuries that develop over time as a result of the repetitive motions and high forces and different postures and things like that. So that's kind of the description of my research program and what I've been doing for the last few years.
What are the injuries that you most commonly see among drummers?
So the first study that I did in this area was a big online survey where I asked drummers to tell me about their experiences with these types of injuries. I had over 800 drummers from around the world fill out the survey.
Wow.
And the two most commonly reported medical diagnoses that drummers received were tendinitis and carpal tunnel syndrome.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and the upper limb was by far the most commonly reported injured body part.
Upper limb?
Yeah.
Like elbow to shoulder?
Wrist to shoulder.
Wrist basically. To shoulder. Oh, I see the upper body.
The entire limb. Upper limb, yeah.
Not the upper arm, the upper limb.
Right.
I'm not an academic, I'm a drummer.
That's okay.
Well, all of that makes a lot of sense. Have you had varying skill levels in your research? I'm wondering whether technique makes a lot of difference to that.
I believe it probably does. But yes, in that survey, I did ask drummers to give me some sense of where they were at within their drumming career. Also asked them things about like how long they'd been playing and how many hours per week and that sort of thing. Most drummers were playing somewhere between 5 and 15 hours per week. Mm-hmm. And the most common, I think there was about 35% of the drummers in my study identified as what I called occasional performance or studio drummers, which means it was like 25% or less of their annual income came from drumming related performances. Okay. But I did have people who were full-time performance and studio drummers. I had drum instructors. I had students. I had the gamut of people.
What has surprised you along the way with this research?
What has surprised me?
Is there anything that was unexpected? Anything that you went, oh, wow, who'd have thought?
I think, before I really started doing this research, I mean, I'm a huge music fan. I go to concerts all the time. So I always knew that the musicians up there were working hard. I mean, clearly you can see that they're sweaty and everything, but never really thought about just how much they are exerting, especially the drummers. Some of the heart rates that I've seen in the people that I've monitored have been astounding, really. And even when I compare them as a group to different professional sports, like I did a comparison of the drummers in my study to professional soccer players in Italy, and their average heart rates were very, very close to what you see in professional soccer players during match play.
Italian soccer players spend a lot more time rolling around on the ground than drummers do.
Well, their heart rates were higher though, so they must have been some time running.
I looked through some of the research that you posted, and I want to say it was the Barry Kerch study from Shinedown, where his average heart rate was like 157, something crazy like that. Like there was a I looked at that and went, holy crap. Now, are you working exclusively with rock drummers? Is that the market here, or are you working with other types of drummers?
No, absolutely. I've worked with a few country drummers. I've worked with a few pop drummers. Most of my drummers are in the rock genre, largely because that's where I started. And this has very much been a sort of snowball, like network driven thing. So, I started off with Mike Mangini, and he posted it, and Jeff Burrows of the Tea Party, and he posted it. And from there, other drummers saw it, and they would reach out to me and say, I'd like to do this. I'd like to do this. So they're seeing their friends doing it, or people that they follow and look up to, or what have you. And so they want to get involved as well. So since I kind of started out with rock drummers, and that has snowballed, but I'm definitely looking forward to working with more drummers from different genres, because I think one of the questions that I get a lot is, have I seen any differences between different genres? And I only have a few drummers from other genres, so it's really kind of early to say, but just looking on an individual level, I think it has a lot more to do with playing style, a person's playing style, than necessarily the music, to some extent, the music itself. Because I've had the country drummers that I've worked with have been among my higher numbers. So
I saw the Rich Redmond one.
Yeah.
Who plays with Jason Aldean. It's the thing about it is that rock music, you're probably hitting harder. Probably, not necessarily. Like if you're mic'd up, maybe not so much, but you're trying to give the illusion, at least, that you're hitting harder, which means a lot more arm motion, a lot more movement. When I was playing in rock bands, I hurt a lot more the day after the show. And now I play primarily with singer-songwriters. It's a much more chill sort of thing, right?
Right.
But the expectation of a rock drummer, and a lot of country drummers now too, is to be spectacular, to be visual. And that's a lot of movement, right?
Absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. And the country drummers that I've worked with, Rich, and also Dusty Saxton with Granger Smith, Dusty actually told me that he uses more double bass pedal with Granger than he has with any of the other bands he's played with.
Really?
Yeah. If you listen closely, it's not, I remember the first time I watched Dusty playing, just looked up a video to see, the style of music. And I was like, that's not country.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely agree. There's a stage presence, and movements and energy that I think the more a drummer brings that, the less, unless you're bringing that to say like smooth rock or, smooth jazz kind of thing, I don't think the genre matters as much. One thing that has been interesting has been, I would get a lot of comments like, oh, you got to get, death metal drummers and speed metal and this and that. And I've got quite a few of those as well. And they certainly have a high output, but because of the nature of that kind of drumming and how fast the motions are, they're not doing those big, huge movements.
They're small motions.
So they're much smaller motions. They're very much faster.
Oh, yeah.
But they're much smaller.
Interesting.
So, yeah. And so I think people are expecting like, oh, those numbers are going to be they're going to blow everyone out of the water. And they don't, probably for that reason.
Yeah,
they're still high, don't get me wrong, but they're not.
Those dudes are working hard, but the faster they go,
Sure.
the more it becomes a wrist movement or an ankle movement. They're not using the arm and the leg as much, right?
And there's no time for the more like the grand movements because
you can't. You can't. You're playing 200 beats a minute.
Exactly.
So you get to actually go to the big shows and you get to be kind of backstage doing all the stuff.
Usually, it really depends. Typically, I do meet with them backstage or side stage to get them kind of hooked up and ready to go with the equipment. Depending on the venue and on the band's preferences, I might be able to, I've done shows where I stay out in the audience to do my end of things. And I've had shows where I've literally sat behind the drummer on stage during the show.
That's so cool.
It's very cool. but yeah, so it really just depends on what's, like I said, what the bands prefer. Some bands don't want anybody other than band and crew back there, and that's fine. I don't have to be back there. But it does make it, aside from obviously it being a cool experience, it does make it, what's neat about it is when I can be close to them like that, I'm in range of being able to pick up the heart rate signal from the monitor. And so I can look at it in real time and give sort of updates on my social media of like, current, like post a little video clip in my story and say, current heart rate, 160 BPM or whatever it is. Yeah. So it's kind of neat when I can do that, but that's certainly, the study can proceed without that. So
who have you been on stage with?
Let's see. Like actually that close on stage. I think it's only been 3 of them.
Okay.
With Barry from Shinedown.
Amazing.
I was right behind his drums for both shows. And actually at one point he brought me up on stage during the opening of Simple Man because he doesn't play for about the first minute or so.
Okay.
And he had told me to meet him behind his drum kit at the start of that song. He's like, and I thought, oh, cool, he'll come down from his riser. We'll take a quick picture. And I got back there and he like waved me up. And so I actually got up on his drum riser during the shows, like 15,000 people.
Amazing.
And we're up there taking a picture. So that was really cool. So yeah, I got to stay pretty close behind him for that. I actually got to sit behind Todd Sucherman when he was here, which was really great.
You wouldn't be able to see anything. It's got so many drums and so many cymbals. It's just like a wall up there.
Yeah, but when you're behind him,
amazing.
You can see everything. So I got to do that for Todd's as well, which was pretty special.
Was he playing with Gowan at that point or with Styx?
No, he was with Styx for that show.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I have seen him play with Gowan, but not for the study. We just went to the show.
Great.
Dave Witt with Municipal Waste. I was right on stage with him, and also for a short time during with Charlie Engen from Five Finger Death Punch.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is your job.
Yeah.
How exciting is that?
It's pretty cool.
Did you when you're entering your PhD program, whatever, did you have any thought in your head that this is what you would be doing with it X number of years later?
No, not even close. No, not at all.
That's amazing.
Even when all this started, I never really imagined that it would go to this point, that there would be this much interest in this kind of research. And I think a big part of that is there's obviously a need for it. I've had so much support and interest from drummers throughout the drumming community. And so many, whether it's just a comment on one of my posts or a quick message just saying like, thank you for doing this. This is so great. Like, nobody's doing this kind of research, or very few people are. And especially with the injury prevention, I think I'm the only person who's actually doing like that kind of work with drummers. But there's very little happening on drummers, period. So yeah, it's been really amazing. And really great working with the drumming community. And, it really makes it special when the work that you're doing is being consumed by people who really want it. So
that's great. It is a physical thing. A lot of people play drums as kids or teenagers and into their 20s. And then I think a high percentage of people begin to fall off at that point. So they don't reach their 30s and 40s like me, where it begins to pay you back a little bit, right? So I have thumb issues and I have a little forearm issue. And it's like the prevention is so important, right? So what's the end game? What's the outcome of the research? What do we do with it?
So the energy expenditure, the stuff that I do with during live performance, there's a couple things for endgame. One is making people aware that playing the drums is very physical, and putting it in terms that they can understand. Everybody understands kind of exercise and calories and that kind of thing. So for somebody who maybe doesn't like traditional exercise or sports, that maybe, but you're into music, maybe this is a viable option for you. If you're already a casual drummer, understand that if you play a little more, this could actually be something that counts as exercise for you. The other thing is that giving the professional drummers these individualized results from these, like the monitoring that I do, really a lot of the people I've worked with have already been pretty into like their health and fitness and keeping themselves in shape for when they're on tour. But this kind of helps even put that even more in perspective of how important that is for them to essentially, I tell them, drummers are athletes. And if an athlete doesn't just show up and play their game, they're doing strength and conditioning, they're doing skill specific practice in addition to playing their games, and that drummers should be treating their bodies in the same way. Doing skill specific practice and also doing general strength and conditioning to keep themselves in shape to handle the physical demands of being on tour, or being in the studio. But it also sort of dovetails into my other research, which is that anybody who is exerting themselves to that level is likely to run up against an injury of some kind at some point. And so my hope is that with the other work that I do, that I can start understanding more about the types of injuries that drummers get and what causes them, what puts them at risk or maybe protects them from an injury, so that I can get that information to teachers who can train the young students. You talk about kids who play the drums but then stop once they're in their 20s and 30s. Maybe some of that might even be dropout because of injuries.
Maybe it happens, yeah.
And if we can prevent that by teaching, better technique, and even maybe not even just that, but more specifically about how to recognize an injury, how to try to prevent one, what to do if you think you have an injury. Yeah. Those are really important things. And the earlier you catch something, the more likely you are to be able to treat it and move on from it. So my hope is that my work can help lead to more of that to keep people playing for longer and better.
Do you see a product coming out of this, a book or anything like that?
Probably at some point. I do. A lot of people have asked about a book, and I could see myself doing that at some point, although no concrete plans for that in the immediate future. One thing that I would like to, and probably will start doing within the next 6 months to a year, is possibly some one-on-one consultations with drummers.
Oh, good idea.
In terms of, whether that's in person or Skype calls where I can, watch them playing and maybe give them some information on some changes to make potentially to their setup, to help them, or even talk about their, pre-show routines and things like that to help them set themselves up to reduce their risk of injury, or potentially make some changes that might help them deal with an injury they're already facing and help stop it from getting worse or coming back.
I think there's huge potential in that. I really do.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. And that's wonderful. Good for you. I'm excited about all of this for you. I really am.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
I just think it's so cool. And, when we were first corresponding about doing this, you said you were reluctant to do another podcast because you'd done a bunch, because what you're doing is super cool. And, the drumming world wants to know about it. But you said to me that you read on my website the bit that I wrote about what can come from one small act of courage. And I wondered if you would address that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first started corresponding, I had just done a couple podcasts, and I was kind of like, to do another one just to talk about I hadn't done anything new since then. So I'm like, I don't really have anything new to add. But I checked out your website. I knew you were from Ontario and nearby. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to check this out. And, that line resonated with me just because, the way I got started doing this research was from like the smallest, like almost a throwaway. I don't even want to say it was an act of courage, but it was just a simple thing that I did that put myself out there that completely changed the course of my work. And so I thought, I read that and it just hit home. And so I thought, okay, no, I'll do it. I got to do it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. That's what this is all about. That the slightest thing, making contact with Mike Mangini as a starting point, all of a sudden blows up this whole area of research that you had no idea could even happen. Was it tough to get the university on board with this?
No, not
Really?
at all. No. I have a pretty supportive department to begin with. But really at the university, they're looking for us to be doing, well, first of all, we do have autonomy in the research that we do, but they also are really interested in supporting innovative, different new areas, and areas that might have a high impact. And so when I brought this to my dean, he was surprised because he just hadn't really thought the same way I was. I hadn't thought about it either. But he was very supportive and said, yeah, go for it, give it your best. And so, yeah, they've been great. They've been very supportive.
The interesting thing is that you've got some very high profile people involved in your research. I mean, this is bringing attention to the university from some pretty interesting places, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Which is pretty cool. So
it's super cool. I love it. I love it as a drummer. And, I just think my show is about people who do unconventional things. Like it's an inspiration for other people to do that too, to put out that one step of courage. For me, the one step of courage was just putting an ad on Bandmix saying, okay, I'm ready to start playing again. And my life has utterly changed from that one small act, right?
Right.
As is yours from one small act of reaching out to a drummer. I think that's cool.
I do too. And I love telling the story of how this all got started because it was such a small thing that had such huge consequences. It was, what do they call it? The flap of a butterfly's wings that creates a hurricane somewhere else.
That's right. Yeah.
It very much, was that for me. If he hadn't responded, he didn't respond, no big deal, Right. But if I hadn't put that tweet out there, I for sure wouldn't be here. So, I did that one small thing and it turned into this amazing journey that I've had for the last 3 years and hopefully for the next several more to come.
I love it. I love it. So who would you like to work with that you have not yet?
Oh my goodness.
You're a big rock and roll fan, so I wonder. Dave Grohl.
I have. And yes, Taylor Hawkins. I would love to get Taylor Hawkins involved. To be selfish, I've already worked with almost all of the drummers from all my favorite bands.
Really?
So, yeah. So I don't have a whole lot left on that wish list, but there are so many great drummers out there and so many that I've met that I didn't really know before. I'm just looking forward to continuing with
That's
whoever's
great.
willing to be involved. Several that I've made contact with that, some have committed already and we're just waiting to have tour dates. Others that I've made contact with, but haven't really broached the subject of being involved yet with. So, which I won't mention anyone just yet because I don't like to talk about them in case it doesn't come through.
Of course.
But, so, I'm looking forward to, everything that we've got tentatively and concretely lined up for 2020. And
that's great.
We'll see where it goes from there.
I've had several drummers on this program. So if you need an in with any of those people, I might be able to help you with them. And, a couple of Canadian ones too.
That would be amazing.
Danny Miles from July Talk, for example. And
so Danny he was the first person to reach out to me.
Was he really?
Yes, he was. Yeah. He saw my post about Jeff Burrows' data and he he contacted me on Twitter. And so, yeah, he was in the study in 2018. So he's already done it.
Danny's done it.
Yeah.
Jason Tate, who plays drums for Bahamas.
Okay. Nope. Haven't had him yet.
Completely different style. So if you're looking for a different vibe on playing the drums live,
yeah,
Jason Tate. And
cool.
I mean, there's a bunch of them. But anyways, you're doing great. You don't need my help with this. But, if you happen to scroll through my interview list and you're like, oh, that would be interesting, and you need a hookup, I'm happy to hook you up.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm happy to, wherever I can get a contact that I may not be able to, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm happy to help. And I'm gonna ask one more question, which I haven't asked anybody in a long time, so you should feel privileged.
Okay.
What's your message to my audience, Dr. Azar? What's your message to the people out there?
My message? Well, oh my goodness. My message to drummers specifically is to take care of yourselves because what you do is hard. And if you want to keep doing it for a long time, you need to put some effort towards maintaining yourself and conditioning yourself. My message to any just non-drummer, and even the drummers themselves, I guess, would be to take that chance, to take that shot, because you never know what's going to come of it. Maybe nothing, but maybe it'll be something amazing. And you won't know that if you don't do it.
Your whole life can change.
Your whole life could change.
With one tweet.
With one tweet.
It worked for Donald Trump. It worked for you.
Oh, God. Oh, please don't equate me to that. Can you chop that part?
It was on me. It's not on you.
Kidding.
It's not.
I'm just kidding.
You're way better than him, and we all know it. I'm gonna let you go because I know you need to, and I appreciate so much that you took the time to talk to me. Thank you so much.
Oh, I had a great time. Thank you for having me on and for reaching out to be involved. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, and good luck with all the stuff. And we will keep an eye on you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
And when I come down to Windsor to play a show, I'll let you know.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Take care. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Alrighty. You too.
Bye-bye.
Let me know when it's when it's posted and everything.
I will do that. Absolutely.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
See ya. Thank you once again, gentle listener, for taking in today's show. And thank you, Nadia, for being such an inspiring guest. If you want to know more about Nadia and the rest of my guests, go to www.john-huff.com. That's JOHN-HUFF.com. You can also find the show on Facebook at The John Huff Podcast. If you're an Instagram person, you can find me at JW_Huff. No matter where you listen to the show, please do me a big favor and leave a rating and a review. Preferably a positive one. That's all the time we have for today, but I'll be back very soon. Until then, keep your wits about you and remember, good things happen when you put yourself out there. Bye for now. On the road again. Here I am on the road again.